Welcome to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. My name is Denise Alvarez. I get the pleasure and honor of hosting you here. And before we dive into today's topic, which is managing hustle and rest as an equestrian entrepreneur, I know it's a biggie, right? But before we dive into that, I'm going to quickly introduce myself in case we're new friends, and then we're going to dive right in. Now, as I said, my name is Denise, and through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to help dream-chasing horse business owners like yourself to see clearly through the marketing overwhelm so you can create a cohesive plan and a clear message for your social media, your website, and your email marketing. And it's going to turn your online audience into your customers. Now, I do that specifically through one-on-one coaching, as well as website design and website copywriting and education, such as this podcast and some online learning resources as well. My heart, friends, truly is to help you be out doing more of what you love to do in the equestrian world, whatever that is. And so here on the podcast, you will get a mix of step-by-step strategies, essential how-tos, and entrepreneurial mindset shifts that will help you not only see what's possible for your business, but I'm also here to guide you through that process so you can make it happen. And so today we're going to do that by talking about this idea of managing hustle and rest. Again, I know it's a big topic, but I also think it's such an important topic for us to dive into. Now, here's a question. Do you believe it's possible to be in a growth building phase of your business and also make space for rest? What does rest look like for you? Especially when being with horses is both your job and what you do for fun, which I know is the case for many of you. Now, here's what I know. The answers to these questions are very subjective. I am not suggesting to you that there is one right way to do things or that there is one right answer. Certainly dependent upon your season of life and business and what you truly do enjoy doing with your time, the answers will be different and they will probably change over time as well. But here's what's true, period. If you stay in hustle mode 24/7, 365 days a year, eventually, you may not completely burn out, because I'm not going to say that's for sure for everybody. Like many of you will probably burn out, but certainly the joy of doing what you love to do will very likely dissipate. The joy won't be there. The love for it won't be there because we are made to do both, to work hard, but also we need seasons of re-energizing and recharging, and rest is a part of that. Now, you know, my heart here on the podcast is to help you do more of what you love in the equestrian world and to be able to do it for the long term, right? I want to help you build a sustainable, successful equine business. And so that's why today on the podcast, I invited Megan Robinson to join me because we're going to have a very candid conversation about hustling and resting as an equestrian entrepreneur. Now, why Megan? Having built her business while also undergoing multiple kidney transplants and personal health challenges, Megan's in a unique position to give you some lessons that she's learned about managing hustle and rest as an equestrian entrepreneur. Now, I know that many of you listening are in different types of businesses, right? A service-based business, it may look different for a product-based business, and someone who is literally in a business where you're managing the livestock under your care, that is different as well. So I acknowledge that from the get-go. All right. So we're going to try to speak broadly, but also specifically enough where as an entrepreneur, you know, we're talking to you. Now, Megan is going to give you plenty of practical tips and strategies, which you know I'm always here for on the podcast. But before we get into that with Megan, I want to first address two important things with you. First, this is something I know that comes up for most of us as entrepreneurs. It may even come up as you hear some of the tips that Megan's going to give you. And you may have even experienced this feeling as soon as you saw the title of this podcast, and that is fear. Oftentimes, fear is the driver that keeps us from leaning into rest. It may be fear of missing out. It may be fear of not measuring up or being good enough, measuring yourself against someone else's standards of success. It may be fear of not making enough money, especially if you are the breadwinner for your family or you contribute a large portion, or the money that you're making is specifically for supporting your horse, which I know is the case for many of you. And so you may have that fear. You may have the fear of falling behind, that your business is not doing as well as someone that started the same time as you or even started after you. All of those things are fears, and some of them honestly seem completely logical. Like, yes, of course, Denise, I need to make money to be a profitable business. And so I'm afraid I'm not going to do that. And that's one of the reasons that I help you with your marketing strategy, because building a profitable business is absolutely important. It's how you're going to do it for the long term, right? But what often happens is that the fear that you are feeling is founded on a belief system that says you're not enough. And that if you work hard enough, if you hit a certain income level, or you work with a certain named client list, or you land in a certain named publication, then that's when you'll be enough. And can I just be the one to tell you that whether you build a 3-figure, 4-figure, 5-figure, 6-figure business or more, your worth is not determined by the success of your horse business. Let me just repeat that again for you. No matter how little or how much money you make, your worth is not determined by the success of your horse business. I would encourage you to maybe write that one down. Put it on a sticky note where you can see it. Because many of the fears that I just named, while seeming logical in some ways, that yes, you do need to make money to be a profitable business, but can I just remind you that even if you have a few months where you're not making a profit and it's a struggle, it's not a reflection of your worth as a person, okay? So can we separate that as we look at these tips and strategies from Megan? Because when you hear her say things like evaluate your prices or, take some time off, you may be thinking, I can't do that because then I won't make enough of it. If I don't make enough, I'm not good enough. Okay. So I'm trying to, before you even get to the tips and strategies, address some of these things that are going on in our minds so that you can be open to the tips and strategies Megan has for you. So that's number 1. Number 2, what is your definition of success? Do you know what success looks like for you, your family, and your business? Here's why this matters. As you're listening to these ideas of managing hustle and rest, and even as you're hearing me say the success of your business doesn't determine your worth, I am not saying don't try to build a successful business. I'm just saying separate that from what your personal value is as a human being, as a created being by God, as I believe. That's where your value comes from. Separate that. Okay, so chase after success. I am here for that 110%. And I want to help you do that, whether it's here on the podcast or through one-on-one coaching or website copy and design or the online education piece. All the things I do are to help you to hit your definition of success in your business. But if you do not know what success looks like, then you're just chasing something that you don't even know what you're going after. So instead, I want you to really consider, what does success look like for me in this season of life? Okay. It may be that you're competing at the biggest shows in your discipline, that you are hosting a certain number of clinics every year, that you are selling a certain number of products every month, that you're building a wait list for your lesson program, that you have X number of clients booked per month for photographers. Like, you're going to have some success measures, and I want you to have that. But remember, you've heard me say this 1,000 times here, and I will continue to say it. Success is subjective. But if you don't take the time to define success for yourself, then you're going to be hustling with no objective. You're never going to know when your hustle is paying off. You won't even know what to celebrate because you're just chasing after more. And that's not my heart for you. Now, remember, you may revisit your version of success multiple times. Actually, hopefully you will, because it will likely change as your season of life and your season of business changes, and as your capacity changes. And remember, if you have a team, can I just encourage you, make sure that they know what success looks like as well, personally and cohesively as a group, right? Otherwise, if you have team members and they're just doing work, but they don't even know what success looks like, what's a win? What's our measurable that we're going after right here? Then they're just going to feel like they're hustling for the sake of the hustle as well. Even if you've hired a hard worker, hard workers love to know what they're working towards, right? And when they have a bigger why, when they have a clear success measure, your team members will enjoy their work more and they'll likely work even harder. Okay, so have your version of success defined, share it with your team. And then again, when you listen to these tips and strategies from Megan, that will fall in line with what we've talked about here. Now, if you're saying, Denise, I have a hard time really defining success, can I encourage you to first start with this idea of goals? Have some clear goals for your business. And then those can become, for the season, the definition of success for you. Now, this would be a whole other podcast episode of success and failure, right? The opposite of success seems to be failure. That's not the case. If you don't hit your measurables, it does not mean you didn't succeed. It means you learned, right? So have that little mindset shift in mind. But that doesn't mean you don't have clear goals that you go after. So if you have not set goals for your business yet and you're listening to this episode when it's publishing and we're in the fourth quarter of 2024, then I want to encourage you to set your fourth quarter goals. Or if you're planning for 2025, set your 2025 goals. And if you need a place to start, I have a free goal setting guide that I would invite you to grab. If you go to stormlily.com/goals, then you can get that and have a head start on setting next year's goals or for this quarter. It is not too late. It's never too late to set a goal that you're going to go after. All right. So grab that free guide. It's stormlily.com/goals. Consider your definition of success. Do not operate out of fear. Operate knowing that you are enough as you are, and that enables you to serve well the people and the horses that you are serving. And with those things in mind, friends, now I'm going to invite you into this conversation with Megan and I as we just talk candidly about the ideas of managing hustle and rest as an equestrian entrepreneur. Let's dive in. All right, Megan, thanks so much for joining me here. I really appreciate you making time for this.
Thank you so much. I know we've been trying to meet up for like a couple of months now, so I'm so glad that this worked out.
Yes, I am thrilled. And to be honest, the reason we haven't met up is very much has to do with what we're going to talk about today in terms of managing our calendars and rest and hustling as entrepreneurs. But before we do that, first, I would love it for those who are just meeting you and for my own benefit, because I only know what I've read online and I want to hear it from your mouth. Tell me a bit about your story, how you became a movement specialist and your equestrian biomechanics and fitness coach. And now you also are providing a community for equestrians in business as well to connect. So tell me a bit about your background and how you've landed at this place, which is, I know, is a big question. I always say that. So tell me in your words and we'll just take it as we get it.
It's been super fun. I will say I was kind of born to be an entrepreneur. I at the age of 2, literally sent my grandparents a picture that I drew and was like, if you like it, you can send back $2 and you can keep it. But if you don't like it, send the picture back and then I'll find someone else who will pay $2 for it. So I've had sitting businesses since I was like 8. I had a newsletter. So I was kind of built to do my own business.
Yes, you were.
Yeah. In terms of fitness and all that, I started working for a local gym when I was 16 and kind of worked my way up. Eventually became a personal trainer through that. And then I found out about a Pilates studio in our area, started to go there, and then did training with them to become a Pilates instructor. And then met through that my mentor. She lives in Toronto, but she specializes a little bit more in like biomechanics and like, I don't love the term functional movement just because it gets so overused, but a little bit more like biomechanics, sports specific training. And she took everything that I thought I knew and like turned it on its head and like really challenged me to think outside of just choreography and why you would do movements and how to like tweak it for each individual body. So she really shifted my focus to what she wanted me to call myself a movement specialist, because I do not teach traditional Pilates or traditional fitness. is very much individual based. And then I've been riding since I was 2 and got a little bit more into it in university, and then realized all the stuff I was doing off the horse was really helping to strengthen what I was doing on the horse. I was like, there's a niche in there for for that. So I started my Pilates for Equestrian class, and then that has slowly over the years, not so slowly over the years, evolved into very much specifically focusing on equestrians. And I do have some non-equestrian clients who have been with me for like 12 years.
That's
but
amazing.
it's really fun. All of my new clients, like I'm only taking on new clients if they are equestrians right now.
Okay. And so it is one-on-one coaching. It is classes. It's a mix. What does that business model look like
Anything
for
and
you?
everything. So I do offer in studio. I have a home studio in London, Ontario. So I do have in-person sessions. I have online group classes. I do barn visits where I do more of like that biomechanics piece. So I'll watch people ride, chat with them about where their struggles are, where muscle imbalance comes in. And then that super depends on what they want. So for some people, I just make different suggestions for how they can think about their position to achieve what they want. Some people, I give them homework like, hey, based off of this, if you use this as your warm up, that should help that when you're on the horse. So that very much depends on what the person wants. Some people are very honest and are like, yeah, I'm not going to do a warm up before I get on. I'm like, okay, that's okay. Let's figure out what we can do when you're on the horse then. Help this, and this. So yeah, I do barn visits in my home studio, virtual, anything and everything.
And are you, you're not discipline specific as far as equestrians that you work with? You're like anybody that rides.
Anyone who rides. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who rides. I would say I'm not as well versed in the Western world, but it's the same as like I work with a lot of hockey players too, and I can't skate to save my life, but I understand the biomechanics necessary for them to improve their game. Where there's a few things I've learned so much over the years with Western, but the biomechanics are the same, and what you need your body to do in order to stabilize is the same. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And so tell me how long. You said you've had some clients that have been with you 12 years. How long have you had your business?
I started teaching, working for myself. I started teaching out of my first apartment in university. I had some fitness equipment. Then people literally came into my tiny little apartment and did sessions in my living room. And then I actually opened a storefront right out of university, of a storefront studio. Loved that. It was really fun. I didn't love that I needed 30 people in a class in order to pay for my overhead. And I felt like no one was making progress because you kind of had to modify and kind of work with it's a terrible term, but like the lowest denominator. Like this is the big injury, so I'm going to modify everyone else's workout to make sure that this person is okay. And that wasn't, I like people to progress. I like to work towards something. So I ended up shifting. I worked in an osteo clinic for a little bit and then found a house that works to offer sessions there. So I've had some clients who have literally been with me through 6 different location changes. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And so people stay with you ongoing.
Yeah. I have my OGs, my core group where they were stuck with each other.
Yeah.
Like not, they're more than just clients. They're absolutely friends and family now. And it's so wonderful what they've been through with me. So yeah.
Yeah. That is so cool. Okay. So tell me about Equestrians and Biz then. How did that come along for you?
So that's a newer venture that started last year. And my main motivation for that was I had a couple of coaches in the area who felt like I was stepping on their toes with what I was coming in to work with their students. And I just mainly for myself wanted to create awareness of like, no, I'm not stepping on your toes. I don't want to be a coach. I come at this, like I'm here to work with you and help you. So I wanted to create a little bit more camaraderie and a little bit more of a community feel of like we can actually all work well together instead of competing against each other because we all have different approaches. So I started with my first Equestrians and Biz mixer last year. And I had some guest speakers, really fabulous guest speakers. And then I taught a class to kind of show what my approach is. And like at the time I was like, if I get 12 people, I'll be super happy. And I ended up, I think we had 32. And I was like so pumped about that. And from that, I got really, really great feedback of like, this would be so nice if we could do this more regularly. So then I started the Equestrian and Biz membership, which is $10 a month to join. We do monthly virtual meetings that vary from different discussion topics that have been really fun. I've had some really cool guest speakers join and present in there too. And then you also get to be part of our private Facebook group where we talk about different opportunities, different discussion issues. Like it's a very safe place to talk about anything you would like feedback on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Our next mixer is coming up at the end of this month, and I'm very looking forward to seeing that evolve. But it's really just to create a safe community so that we can all work together instead of thinking about it as competition, because it's not.
That is so good. So I'm trying to think of when this will publish, but I have another episode with Jamie Samples talking about, I'm like, oh, I will point people to it for listeners. I will double check the calendar, but literally an entire episode talking about collaboration versus competition and that idea. So I love that that's your heart behind that, because that could not be more true. Okay. So, when you and I first connected, so we connected through a mutual friend and we were like, oh, definitely. I love what you're doing. I'm like, let's talk about the podcast. But at the time, you shared a bit about kind of your business journey and kind of the balance theme of hustling to build your business and serve clients with a high quality of service, but also in that process, the need to care for yourself and your health and your animals. So talk to me a little bit about the importance of that to you and what your experience has been in that.
It's so tough. It's a really like trial and error experience of trying to find that balance. I saw something on Instagram a while that made me laugh of like entrepreneurs. I didn't want to work 9 to 5. So now I just work 24/7. And I do think there's a lot of truth to that. I work a lot more crazy hours working for myself than I would 9 to 5, but I love it. I think it's hard because a lot of us who run our own businesses, a lot of it is the services that we offer. So if we don't work, we don't get paid. And that's really, really challenging. I think I had been in business for maybe 5 or 6 years before I actually took a vacation. And the only reason I took a vacation was because the clinic that I was working for at the time, I had a lovely, he was the manager of the clinic, and I was mad at him at the time, but he was like, I don't accept that. Like, you will be taking time off. And I was so mad, being like, you don't know my business. But when I took it, I was like, oh, this is really nice. I need that. Yeah. It took a little bit for me to fully appreciate, like, I would take time off because I was sick, but I wouldn't take time off to prevent becoming sick. And it's a very hard balance when you work with people that you need to be available when they are available. So it's a fine line and a fine balance. Like you have to have give and take. Like, I still work 3 evenings a week and I still work Saturday mornings, and that's my give and take of here's what I'm willing to give you. But for me, it took a little bit to figure out, and it changes like what schedule works well for me. Like, when I was younger, I used to do a lot of like split shifts. So I would work like 7:30 in the morning until 11:30, have a few hours off, and then start again at 3:30. And that worked really well for a long time. And then all of a sudden this year, I was like, I'm really tired. And I would have Fridays off, but I would be non-functional come Friday because I was just so burnt out and so exhausted that Friday would be like a write-off, and I couldn't even enjoy it so that I could work again Saturday. So I finally figured out, for me right now, in the time of my life that I am now, I actually work 6 days a week, but I work shorter periods. And that has worked much better for me to not necessarily work 15-hour days, but to work like 4 to 6 hour days. And that works a lot better for me.
Yeah. Well, and especially for those listening, like there definitely is a difference too. And I know this with the equestrian entrepreneurs that are service-based business owners who are not like caring for the animals as part of their service. Yeah. Because that's a whole other dynamic. And I feel like maybe I need to find somebody else like to come in and join that conversation too, because that is, taking that vacation time, taking the day off. Like, there's a whole team process that has to be built within that. But for those that are listening that are solopreneurs or maybe have a team, but still, taking time off is not reliant upon having someone to care for the animals. It seems to be more of a mindset around things than it is about the reality of not being able to, you know, like because you talked about for like 5 years, it wasn't even you didn't even think about it, you know?
I can't take time off. And for me, it also like, uh, one of my really good friends, she's a equine osteo, and her and I both have the same work ethic where we're really bad at taking time off. But I remember her and I having a conversation of like, we're not brain surgeons. Like people like are not going to die if we if we take time off. And especially like, yes, I believe my job is very important and I help people. But if I take a week off, they can go for a walk. They can do some squats on their own. There are things that they could do on their own. So yes, I believe that my job helps people a lot, but at the same time, they'll be okay for to do.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great point. That's such a good point. And I feel like if I'm remembering correctly, Megan, you'll have to fill in the gaps for me. But when you and I talked, I feel like you were talking about there was a point where you got pretty sick, right? And where you
have I have a lot of underlying health issues. So I've had 3 kidney transplants, and I in the middle of the pandemic ended up with Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS. So that was my work hustle. I literally taught classes on Zoom, paralyzed in my hospital bed. So if you want to talk about work ethic, I can hustle very well. But it's a learning curve for me too, of being able to take that time so that I can nourish myself and take care of myself. And this year it's been very different for me in terms of there have been days where I more from like an emotional exhaustion, mental health, dealing with a senior sick gelding, that I actually like canceled a few of my like days because I was just emotionally exhausted. And for me, that's very different because I have to be historically have to be pretty close to dying in order to actually cancel people. So that was different for me to cancel more from an emotional health, mental health perspective versus physical health. But all of that adds up, and I was able to go back to work with feeling good and feeling rested and feeling like that brain fog was lifted so I could show up as my best self. So that's been a new journey this year of mental health as a reason to cancel too. Not just physical.
Yeah, it's so important. And really the reality is like there for a while, the word balance was such a key word that everybody was like, hey, this is how you balance it all. But I feel like it's definitely swung the other way where we're like, I don't like the word balance. You know, everybody's like, because balance it's not true. And especially for entrepreneurs, it's not going to be like, you're not going to be fully in balance all the time. But, you know, and so there will be periods of hustle. You may be in a launch season. You may be in your busy show season. You may be a season where you're hustling a ton. But like you said, if you never, ever have a rest season, then that's not setting you up for long-term success either. And certainly my heart on the podcast is that long-term sustainability, and you're headed to burnout if you don't ever have that. But we have to acknowledge that as a business owner, when you're in the building and growth stage, hustle is required. Like you're going to have to get scrappy. You're going to be up late. You're going to be up early. You're going to be working weekends. It's not perfect. It's going to be messy, but it's going to be required, but you can't stay there forever. So especially, go for it. No, go. I'd love to.
I work with a lot of, especially equestrian entrepreneurs where they're building their business, and like they ask me like, what is the best way to do this? And I'm like, honestly, like it kind of just has to suck for a little bit. And I'm so sorry, but you kind of just have to say yes a lot more than you will in 10 years. Like when I first started, I would start at 5:30 in the morning, and I would like do that, go home for a little bit, and then I would be finishing at 9:30 at night. And like, there's absolutely no way I could do that now. But those clients that I said yes to then, they're now still with me, and I've like rearranged their entire life multiple times to make it work for my schedule, but they're willing to do it. Where when they first started with me, they had no reason to contort their whole world in order to make it work for my schedule. So you do just kind of have to say yes to start. And then once people build that appreciation for what you do and what you offer, they are more willing to make wiggle room to make it work for your schedule.
Oh, that's so true. Okay. You led me right in to my question, which this might be one of your tips, but I would love to know from you, Megan, from a super practical perspective, when we're talking to equestrian entrepreneurs, what are some practical ways that you have learned or guided others in this process of managing hustle and rest as an equestrian entrepreneur?
First one is take the vacation. But because that took me so much longer than it should have. But take the vacation, even when you're first starting. No, you maybe can't take 2 weeks off, but can you take the long weekend? Yes. And can you make sure that you're filling your own cup in that time? Yes. And for me, like I work 6 days a week, which makes it very, very busy, but I keep Sunday as my non-negotiable. I don't make appointments. I don't make any set plans for that day. I just wake up and see what I need on my Sundays and then go from there. But I think one of the other things, as you start to get more established when you're first starting, there's different set of rules, but once you get established, I think it's really important to make sure that your pricing is set to make it sustainable for you. Like I've talked to a few people who've been doing it for a while and they're like, I'm still like going week to week with like my paychecks and like trying to make that work for me, but I physically can't take any more people on. And my answer to them is raise your prices. If you are working your max capacity and you're still not able to, like, if you're still going week to week, raise your prices. And if that means you lose a few people, but you're making more with the other people, it does balance out. But I think that's such a hard, I'm terrible at that. I don't take my own advice very well on that, but it's hard. And like, it's scary to like announce that price range and be like, are you still going to come? But they either will do it or they won't. And I've learned that if you lose one person because of something like that, because they weren't appreciating what you are worth, you find someone else who fills that spot, and the universe kind of takes care of you a little bit in that way when you put in the work. But checking in with your prices, making sure that they reflect what you're doing so that you can have a sustainable, enjoyable life. That's the whole reason that we work, is so that you can do the fun stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The other one is, playing with your schedule. You don't have to have a traditional schedule. It can look as weird and wonky as you want it to, as long as it works for you. But it's scary to make those changes too. But like I said, years in, I now can say to my clients, like, this isn't working for me. I'm exhausted. Can we try moving your session to this day or this day? And I have yet to have anyone say no. So again, different rules for when you're first starting, but trying to play around and see what works.
That's really good. And I feel like that idea of either pricing and schedule, like, is to give yourself the freedom to be able to make those choices. Like sometimes we forget that we are the business owner. And so you actually do have the freedom to say, no, that doesn't work for me on this day, instead of like bending to the client and the customer every time, feeling like that you have to because you're in hustle mode. And yes, that may be true, but if all you ever do is bend to them, and there's never a point where you like say, okay, I am going to claim this day back as mine, then again, burnout is where you're going to be headed, and it won't be sustainable, like you said.
Yeah. For me, typically, like, my quieter season tends to be the summer. People are on vacation. Some people like dip down how many sessions they do a week because they're swimming or they're playing with grandkids or whatever it may be. But it took me so long. I would panic like come August, because I would be like, oh my gosh, like, I need more clients. I need to like get on this hustle board. So then I would get more clients, and then September would roll around and I would just be like flooded with way too much. I had taken on way too much. So it took me so much longer than it should have to realize, like, enjoy your summer. Like, enjoy it's quieter, let it be quieter so that you're rested and ready to go for when September gets crazy again. But it took a very long time for me to not panic in August, being like, not working as much as I should, but learning to communicate. That's okay, because come September, you'll be running around like crazy again.
Yeah. And that's a good word. And to plan around those seasons. I like that. I noted that. Yeah. Okay. I interrupted you. Were there other tips and strategies that you had? Okay.
No, I think it's so hard because it super depends on what realm of business you're going through. But I think the biggest takeaway that I've learned is like, learn to step back and just take a second to reflect. Is this working for me? How am I feeling? Am I getting what I wanted out of this when I first started this adventure? And not being afraid to change your course if the answer is no, this isn't what I wanted.
Okay. I love that. Stepping back to say, is this working? Because oftentimes too, what happens is we get into that hustle mode and the evaluation stage is not there. And so again, like looking at seasons, if you go, okay, I know for these 3 months, it's going to be really crazy, but I'm going to look at the calendar and I'm going to plan at the end of this time period. I'm going to have this day and I'm going to evaluate what's working, what's not working. What do I need to do moving forward? Being in that state of just evaluation and being willing to be flexible to make changes can make just a world of difference. Because otherwise you do just get stuck in what you're doing and thinking that's the only way to do things, which isn't hardly ever true.
Never true. Never true.
The other thing I noticed that you said, Megan, and I think you may have said this with each one, is that when you talk to people, it's fear.
Yeah.
So much of our hustle mindset, often, not always, for sure. Sometimes it is necessary, but often is based around fear. Being afraid to tell somebody no, or being afraid to take time off, or being afraid to raise prices, or like so many of those things. And they're real fears. But I think that, man, one of the pieces of being an equestrian entrepreneur is recognizing how much of that is mindset work. And that when we stop and really work on the mindset we have around those things, then we have the freedom to make those changes and really experience, what's possible. But if we sit in that fear and just allow ourselves to be afraid, then we're never going to see those changes. And it's not as fun. Like you said, like, why did you start your business in the first place? It was probably not to feel run out and burn out all the time.
Yes.
And then no, go for it.
I was just gonna say, for me, it sounds a little cocky, but like I know I can fall back on that hustle. So if I try something and it doesn't necessarily pan out the way it used to, like, yes, of course I worry about money, but I have always been creative in finding ways to make more money. So I know for myself, if I try something new and it doesn't work, I can fall back on my ability to hustle and figure out a different way to do it or a different direction to do it. So for me, like, even like starting a podcast, I'm like, why am I doing this? Do I want to do this? I was like, yeah, I actually really do. And I gave myself a timeline of, okay, let's give it a year. Let's see how it goes. And if I don't feel like all of my efforts are getting any sort of return, then I'll leave it, which I don't think is going to be the case. But I gave myself a timeline of, this is when I started putting in a lot of effort. Let's see in a year, if that effort isn't being rewarded in some way, then I can't say I would call it quits, but I would modify.
You reserve the right to make changes as necessary. Yeah. That's so good. And that's the thing. Okay. Money fear is real and money necessity is real. Like, we are in a business to make a profit. And so that's why, like, this conversation is really about managing both, because both are going to be necessary to build a sustainable business. But one of the keys is, in that hustle period, I feel like, is finding what works in your business. And so then you do have that to fall back on. So you know what you have to fall back on because you've had that hustle season where it was profitable. You know where you can get to if you need to. And so in business, like, certainly if you're not making money and if it's not profitable, you may need to hustle. You may need to evaluate your schedule and your prices. Like, there may be some other things you need to do. But knowing, okay, I know where my leads are coming from. I know where my marketing is working and where I can lean in more if I need to, because I need to bring in clients, customers, revenue. That's the reality of business too,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So good. Okay, Megan, like I said, I just really appreciate your honesty about this, because I know when we talked that you were like, you said I was literally in the hospital room doing Zoom classes and hustling because I needed to. Like, you're like, I knew I needed to. But then you've also shared how this year you've taken time to rest and how it's helped you in that process. So I appreciate your honesty in that. There is definitely no picture perfect solution, because entrepreneurship is so personal and success is so personal and it's so subjective. But I appreciate you being willing to share what it's looked like for you. And hopefully for those listening, it's just going to cause them to step back and evaluate in their own business. Okay, is this what I set out to do? Am I enjoying the way I'm spending my time? Do I need to move into a season of hustle? Do I need to move into a season of rest, and schedule time to evaluate that? But ideally, they're going to just really take action and consider their season and how they can really build a business that they enjoy doing what they love most. So I appreciate that so much.
That summarizes it beautifully.
Before we go, Megan, tell those listening where they can find you and connect with you online.
My main platform, I would say, is Instagram. It's the Movement Connection. I'm also on Facebook. I have not tapped into the TikTok world. I can't do it. Sorry. You know, I put so much of my attention to one thing. But Instagram is definitely my main platform with the Movement Connection.
Okay, perfect. And of course, I'll link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much. I sure appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, friends, I hope that you were able to have some tips that you took away from this conversation with Megan that you're going to be able to apply in your horse business starting now as we lead into the holidays and as you plan for the coming year. And a quick note for you, I had promised to double check the calendar and the episode on competition versus collaboration is coming up soon. So stay tuned for that conversation with Jamie Samples. If you subscribe, you won't miss it. Now, can I just remind you, and Megan and I talked about this, that different seasons will look differently. You'll have different capacity, you'll have different goals and objectives, and that is all okay. Some of you, I know you are in show season time and you have seasons of show. Sorry, I didn't say that super well. Some of you right now, depending on when you're listening, you may be preparing for some big shows, right? As this publishes, the AQHA World Show is about to begin. There are some eventing things that are going on. Like depending on what world you're in, you may still be in show season. I know it's not summertime, but the reality is either way, I get that there are other factors that determine your schedule and that there may be seasons of your business that you're just down to the wire. You are grinding it out, and that's okay. As an equestrian entrepreneur, you get to decide, this is what I'm doing, and that's the beauty of it. As an equestrian entrepreneur, you're in charge of your business. So you get to say, I'm going into this head first, knowing it's going to be insane, and knowing that on the other side, I'm going to take some time off so that I can reset and recharge. Or maybe during those busy times, you're going to plan 30 minutes where you're just going to get away and reset and recharge. You get to decide what it looks like for you. The point is to do it. The point is to realize that if you never take the time to rest, then you're going to potentially burn out and you're going to steal the joy from doing what you really love to do. All right. So remember seasons and capacity. So very important. All right. Now, again, if you have not grabbed the goal setting guide and you're saying, Denise, I need to set some goals so I can define success. Can I just invite you to grab that? If you go to stormlily.com/goals, or if you go to the show notes, episode 152. So go to stormlily.com/152 and you can get a highlight of today's episode and my conversation with Megan. And you'll also have a link there for the goal setting guide. Now, one more thing. If you're saying, okay, Denise, this all makes sense to me. I'm entering a season where I'm ready to hustle with my marketing. I'm ready to get that website in order. I'm ready for a coach who can help me see clearly and clarify my messaging and make a simple plan that I can actually follow. Then I would invite you to head to my website or send me a message on social media and let's chat. I would love to visit with you about the goals you have for your business and how I could help you as a coach or a copywriter and website designer to make those things happen. Either way, know that I am here cheering for you. And I hope that this is an episode you will save and come back to remind yourself that you are going to operate best when you are not operating out of fear and when you have a clearly defined goal and version of success for you and your business. I applaud you for being here, and my hope is that you take and apply what you are learning and share it with a friend. As you were listening, I guarantee that somebody came to mind that you're thinking, she needs to hear this. He needs to hear this. Send this episode, share the link, and invite them into the conversation as well. Thank you so much for being here. Continue to be here on the podcast. So subscribe if you haven't yet, because I'm continuing to release new episodes every week, and I would love for you to join me here. Have an amazing day, friend.